Good morning. This is Jenna Suheta on Radio Free Hillsdale 101.7 FM. We're talking with State Senator Mike Shirkey. He's the senator for Michigan residents in Branch, Hillsdale, and Jackson County, and we are very happy to have him with us this morning. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Jenna. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. So I see that you had a meeting with Michigan constituents last week. Can you tell us more about what happened at that meeting?
Sure. We call them coffee hours, particularly non-agenda gatherings for folks who want to just talk about whatever's on their mind. That one was in Bronson about a week ago, and then today, in about an hour, I have another one in Spring Arbor at the Big B Coffee in Spring Arbor. So the one we had in Bronson last week was a wide range, everything from opioids to income tax to DNR hunting regulations to road funding to smart meters and gas. I mean, it covered a wide range of topics.
So, Senator, can you tell us more about the opioid epidemic? What went on in that meeting regarding opioid issues in Michigan?
Well, I think that everybody in the room, we had a good turnout, about 25 people at the restaurant there in Bronson last week, and everybody there acknowledged that they either have somebody in their family or close to their family that is affected by this. Interestingly, this week, actually starting tomorrow, in the Senate Health Policy Committee that I chair, we're introducing the beginnings of a long series of legislation intended to help facilitate families, physicians, pharmacists, providers, and law enforcement to continue to drive toward the dramatic reduction in opioid abuse in the state of Michigan. Michigan is not unique. We're one of the high users, but this problem exists across the nation. And then Thursday night this week, I'm going to be speaking at an Optimist gathering at the Columbia Central High School on the same topic with a bunch of providers and specialists.
That you said that every person at the breakfast said that this opioid epidemic affects them and their families. That's really widespread. How will this new legislation, you said it's intended to help ease the burden of this, but how will this new legislation do that?
Yeah, so we've kind of broken it down, Jenna, into four categories. Supply, limiting the supply of opioids. Education, increasing the level of education for people who are taking them. Treatment, advancing other options besides drugs for pain treatment, and then law enforcement, those four categories. I'll give you a couple of examples on the area of education and supply. One piece of legislation will require there to be a conversation between the provider or the prescriber and the patient when they receive their first dose of controlled substance painkillers, and such that the patient has to affirm that they've been told that these are a controlled substance, and if they get into the wrong hands or are misused, that the patient themselves could be liable for a felony. And that's not to create more criminals in this world. It's to raise the awareness of how dangerous these drugs can be if improperly used. I maintain, Jenna, that opioids in our culture today are more dangerous than guns, and they certainly kill more people on an annual basis than guns do. That's one example.
So is that how this epidemic is spreading? Is that it's not necessarily illegal drug use, but it's prescribed drug use?
That's exactly right. The number one source of inappropriate use of controlled substance painkillers are orphaned drugs that you or I or your mom or your dad or somebody else may have legitimately received for a procedure or an episode that they required some pain relief. And then what often happens is that those are not completed. In other words, you might take them for a couple of days and feel better and then stop taking them, and then those become orphaned in your medicine cabinet, for instance. And those are the sources of how they get in the wrong hands. In schools, middle schools now, kids talk about how to identify their parents' prescriptions and which ones will give you a high or not, which ones have value on the street.
Wow.
And so really what we're talking about is raising the level of education and awareness, and so people treat these prescribed prescriptions as carefully as they treat, guns in their homes. I'm a big pro-gun guy, but I take very careful pay very careful attention to how I store them and make sure they're secure so that they can't get misused in the wrong hands. And we need, from a culture standpoint, to apply the same principles to our prescription drugs now.
So it sounds like this obviously this has been going on for a long time here in Michigan. How is this only just now that we're becoming aware of the doctor prescription issue, or has this been in the works for a while?
It's been in the works for about 15 years, but the trajectory of the increase has dramatically changed here in the last 3 years. And
why is that?
I think it's largely due to they started actually treating pain almost like a fifth vital sign and raising it to that level of importance. And so the pendulum swung, Jenna, too far one direction to the point where the goal, the unstated but inferred goal, was that you're only satisfied and you're only doing a good job if you're eliminating pain. And that's a very bad place to be in the medical community, because pain is as natural as anything else is in our lives, and it's often an important signal for us. And by the coupling of promotions by pharmaceuticals, plus the raising of what the customer satisfaction ratings based on how patients feel like their pain has been treated, raised it artificially to a level in which we were started to overtreat. And I am pleased to report that the physician community broadly has accepted this notion, and they're very active now in helping identify policies and procedures to help arrest it. So another thing that we're doing is identifying obstacles for the collection of orphaned or unused prescriptions in every community across the state. I'll give you another example. That last month, Branch County Sheriff Department collects unused prescriptions on a monthly basis. And last month they had a record month of over 140 pounds of prescriptions were collected and brought to there for disposal. If you think about it, Jen, 140 pounds of prescriptions is a boatload of prescriptions.
Definitely. This is fascinating stuff, Senator. But really quickly, because we're starting to run out of time, I wanted to ask you. You reminded residents about the Michigan Department of Treasury website. What do you want Branch, Hillsdale, and Jackson County residents to know about that?
Well, that was done in answer to the fact that we were quickly approaching tax day, which was, of course, last week, and now that's behind us. But what I will say to you, Jenna, is that the budget process is in full swing now in Michigan. We have to do a budget on an annual basis, and both the House and Senate are going to be reporting out their recommended budgets between this week and next week, which will both represent a dramatic reduction in the amount of proposed spending than what the governor recommended, with the specific intention of creating a bucket of funds that we can either apply for short-term tax relief or to spend on pay down of long-term liabilities. And so that is something that's going to affect every taxpayer, and everybody should be paying attention to it. In fact, Jenna, maybe one of our future conversation pieces, we should go over in some detail the history of Michigan's unfunded liabilities and where we need to go with that.
That sounds good to me, Senator. But for right now, we're running out of time. So last question here. These meetings with constituents, are these open to any residents that can make it out there?
Yep.
All right. Excellent. Senator, thank you so much.
Have a good day, Jenna.